What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the video, and today I'm going to be doing my review for Jurassic World Dominion, and this is going to be a pretty juicy one. So as always with most of my reviews, I will do a brief little non-spoiler review, and then I will do my spoilers. So real quick, let's just do the non-spoiler, get that out of the way. So right off the bat, I'm just going to say this. I like this movie, but the reason I like this movie is because I know what this movie is trying to be. The best way to kind of describe that is that this movie feels like a Fast and Furious movie. And some will look at that and go, that is awful. Unless you're going into it expecting a Fast and Furious movie. Then you're going to think it's great. So I went into this movie thinking it was going to be Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, just turned up a notch. Honestly, that's exactly what I got. So you know what? I'm okay with it. So just to briefly just sum up my personal opinion before we jump into spoilers, it is a good movie if you know what you're going to see. So with that said, let's jump into spoilers. So right off the bat, I'm going to say this. I think this movie is actually very fun. I was surprised by how much I actually liked it, because I was hearing that you either love this movie or you hate it. And I'm actually more on the like side. I don't know if I necessarily love it, but I think for what it is, it's actually pretty solid. Now with that said, like I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, this movie feels like a Fast and Furious movie. And to be fair, if you know what you're going to get with the Fast and Furious movies, and you like those movies because they are those movies, well, you're going to like this one too. Okay, so our main characters, Owen, I almost said Bryce Dallas Howard, but Claire, and Maisie, they're solid characters for what they're supposed to be. You know, the purpose they serve in the story, solid. Can't really complain about that. I am going to say that I think it's interesting, Maisie's character arc in this story. I actually, at first, I was like, oh no, they're going to go for the overbearing teenage, I hate everything arc. And they do kind of do that at first. But by the end, after you look at her entire arc as a whole, it's actually pretty solid altogether. So I can't really complain. We also have the old guard from the original Jurassic Park coming back as well. That was kind of one of the big selling features of this movie when it came to trailers. So we already knew that. But the one thing I did not think they were going to do is actually have, well, Alan and Ellie mostly, but have Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler actually part of like the entire movie. Like I thought they were gonna bring them in for like the very end just to kind of have like brief cameos. But no, they are in like the majority of the movie, and that was just great. I loved it. Oh, and that's one thing I definitely wanted to state too. This didn't feel like a Force Awakens type of situation where Han Solo just happened to find Rey. Now with that, of course, you can just say it's the will of the Force leading Rey to Han Solo. You know what I mean? But I think the way that they all came together was very solid. Like it made sense. They could have just did this completely zany reason for why Alan and Ellie are helping the others and just did all of that together. But this actually made sense while the characters came together. You know, Ellie is off doing the locust thing, and of course Alan, you know, still has affection for her. Oh, and by the way, she's single now. And at the very end, they kiss. I was waiting 30 years to see that. They finally kissed, and so I can finally die happy. Hopefully I don't. But if I do, no, I died happy. Okay, no, but in all seriousness, it was just very cohesive. I think that that is one of the things that I thought they were going to mess up the most. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things to complain about this movie, but there's one thing you have to give credit to the film. At least it gave relatively solid reasons for why all the characters are meeting. You know, why all their paths cross. So I like that. So Ellie, who I'd argue is probably the most prominent of the original cast coming back, she's solid, definitely feels like her. Alan Grant, you can tell that he's still pretty much the same character he last left him off with, which is, you know, makes sense, that's how Grant is. And of course, Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, you can't go wrong. You know, he's got so many good scenes. Almost everything he says is hilarious, but that's just Jeff Goldblum. You know, he's got charisma for days. That's just the way it is. So we do have some new characters. There were 3 of them. One is the pilot girl. I actually don't remember what her name was. I thought she was cool. I don't necessarily think she was memorable, but I can't really say she was forgettable either. She was just like an okay character, and she served her purpose, so that was fine. Although I will say this, okay, her eyes are really pretty. Like every time I saw her on screen, her eyes are just really like pretty and cool looking. So there's a little aside for you. There was a character named Ramsey who you think is like working for the big bad the whole time, but then he's actually a good guy and he helps them. So That's kind of all he really serves, but he seems like a cool guy, so I don't mind him. And then you have the character of Dodson. He actually was in the first Jurassic Park, but they brought him back, which is pretty cool. It was interesting to see this character kind of be like, I would say, like an amalgamation of like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, just more like corrupt, I guess you could say. I'm just gonna say that's kind of like his character trait, and you can tell that he's suffering from some type of mental illness, and I think that's why he's pushing the whole we can cure diseases, we can cure Alzheimer's. I think he actually has some type of brain issue he's going to try to solve, and that brain issue is kind of leading him down this darker path, because it definitely seems like deep down he thinks he is the hero, but of course we all know he isn't, and of course he gets his comeuppance, and that's the way it is. Oh, and of course one of the returning characters from Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, Henry Wu, and he's a solid character. I really like the fact that they kind of turned him into a good guy. The last like 2 movies tinted towards him being like this seedy, dark, bad guy, right? And in this one, they turned around where now he's trying to make up for the sins of his past by saving the world effectively by taking out these locusts who are eating all the crops. So I think that's a really cool element to do with him, mostly because, like I mentioned, the movies have sold him as a villain. So to see him actually be a good guy and want to, make up for the things he did in the past, that was cool. So there's pretty much 2 main arcs happening in this series. There is Owen and Claire going after Maisie and Beta, and then there's Ellie going after this locust to figure out if it's actually the big bad corporation doing it and getting proof. So I think it makes sense why they go to the island. Of course, Ian Malcolm is there. He's there to help them, obviously, because he is on the side of good. And it's cool to see all these characters come together and just kind of win the day. And one thing I was not expecting is how cool some of these scenes are. And I know that these are the scenes that people are probably going to hate, and I mentioned they're kind of like Fast and Furious in a way, or maybe a better way to describe it is like Daniel Craig's James Bond, especially the scene where the raptors are chasing them through all those streets. That felt like one of the newer James Bond movies, and I'm not gonna lie, guys, I actually really like that scene. I mean, I know, like I said, that's not Jurassic Park. A lot of the OGs are gonna see that scene and be very mad about it. But for me, I went into this movie wanting to be entertained, and I was. So I can't really complain about it. And like I keep iterating, guys, if you go into this movie expecting the best movie in the world, you're going to be disappointed. If you're going to this movie expecting to capture the magic of the original Jurassic Park, you're going to be disappointed. But if you go into this movie and just aim to be entertained, sit back and relax, this movie is actually a very fun film. In fact, all the way through, I don't think I really have any problems with the movie except for like the last 10 minutes. And I'll get into that, but before we do, I'm going to say this. If you have any questions for me or you want to hear my opinion on something specifically I didn't mention in this review, make sure to leave a comment down in the comments below. Just like leave me a question or whatever. Because if I get enough questions, I'd like to actually do a follow-up to this video, kind of like explaining my reasons for why I think certain ways, and we can just have a cool discussion. Of course, if I use your question in that video, I'll give you a shout out. So go ahead and leave one question per comment. Leave as many comments as you want. And yeah, sounds like a cool idea. Now with that said, there is one part in this movie that actually did turn me off, and it's just interesting because it was one of the best things in Jurassic World. And that was the T-Rex fight with the Giganotosaurus. Ultimately, it felt unearned. It felt like it wasn't supposed to exist. Like the main writer wrote the rest of the movie, right? And then one of the, head producers or execs came in and said, wait, where's the dinosaur fight? And he's like, well, I didn't really write the finale to have a dinosaur fight. It doesn't make sense for there to be a dinosaur fight if there's no reason to have a dinosaur fight. And the exec's like, well, you put a dinosaur fight in that, you're fired. And he's like, well, okay, I'll put a dinosaur fight right here. And that's the way it feels. It feels like the fight is unearned. There is a scene earlier where the T-Rex and the Giganotosaurus are fighting over a deer, and they don't really fight. It's more like the Giganotosaurus is like, hey, get out of here. And the T-Rex is like, all right, fine, whatever, I'm leaving. I'm not going to fight over a deer. And he leaves. And that's kind of like the whole interaction. And then later on, the Giganotosaurus, being a big dinosaur and hungry, sees these people, and he tries to eat the people. But then, of course, they get away and everything's good. And they kind of fight him. And I think like at one point, that's right, Chris Pratt's character Owen, he starts like using a knife to stab the Giganoto in the nose or something like that. They all team up to kind of push the Giganato back, and then they get away, they escape, whatever. And then in the end, our characters come out, and conveniently, there's the T-Rex there, and like, oh no, it's a T-Rex, no one move. And then the Giganotosaurus comes out like, ah, T-Rex, we meet again. Instead of you and I both having our pick of whatever animals we want, let's fight. Let's do this. That's what we're going to do right now. Even though this is a massive canyon, let's just fight each other, because why not? So the Giganotosaurus beats up the T-Rex, and then that big clawed creature, I actually don't know what that creature was called, comes over and starts messing with the Giga and gives the T-Rex time to get back up and, you know, like brush himself off, and they team up, they kill the Giganotosaurus. And my biggest problem with this scene, there's actually two problems. One is for a narrative purpose, and then one is just a massive missed opportunity. So I'm gonna do the missed opportunity first. The creature with the claws, that is where the Spinosaurus should have been. Like, the T-Rex fights the Giganotosaurus, T-Rex gets knocked down, and of course the Giganotosaurus is about to finish off the T-Rex, and then that's when the Spinosaurus would reveal himself and then fight the Giganotosaurus, and then maybe the T-Rex and Spino would team up to take out the Giga or something like that. And then in the end, the Spino and the T-Rex would give like a little head bob, like, yes, we did this together. You repay your sins for the past of what you've done in Jurassic Park 3, Spino, and then of course they go their separate ways or something like that. It honestly felt like that creature wasn't supposed to be in that scene initially. And I'm almost certain, alright, and I can't exactly confirm this, obviously, but I am almost certain that was supposed to be the Spinosaurus in initial drafts. But instead, they said no. Like, someone's like, well, I want you to put this fight scene in, but no Spinosaurus. And they're like, well, why? It's like, well, because when we do another reboot or we do another film down the lane, we can bring the Spinosaurus back, and that'll be blah, blah, blah. So that's the way it feels. And I could be wrong, obviously. I have no way of knowing, and maybe one day someone will answer that. Maybe Colin Trevorrow will answer that in the Q&A or something like that. But it felt like if they were going to bring Spino back, that was the time. To have Spino come back, redeem itself for what it did in Jurassic Park 3, for killing the T-Rex, and this time he would actually save the T-Rex, and of course then the T-Rex would finish off the Giga, or the Spino and the T-Rex would work together to take out the Giga, something like that. But missed opportunity. Now with that said, let me get to the thing I didn't like in this scene. So first off, the whole scene together was shoehorned in. It didn't have to exist in the first place. I think the movie was very solid overall. It definitely felt like there was some meddling in the studio that was like, hey, you have to put a dinosaur fight at the end, because people love that. That's what they want to see. Even though the story does not call for that, even though we've seen plenty of other dinos, it doesn't call for this. Put the T-Rex in there, have him kick the Giga's butt. And so the writer and Colin Trevorrow are like, all right, we'll just throw it in, I guess. And it doesn't feel cohesive. But here's the thing. I actually feel bad for the Giganotosaurus in this. Like, they did him dirty. And I know, okay. Here's the thing. 1, it's a movie. 2, it's a dinosaur in a movie. 3, they're all fake, the whole movie. But I honestly feel bad for what happened to Giganotosaurus. You know, the comparison that I would be making is like, look at the Indominus Rex. That was a killing machine. Think of all the people and creatures that thing killed. That thing needed to be killed. It needed to be stopped. So, the T-Rex did what he had to do. Teamed up with Blue and fed it to the mosasaur, right? Then you have the Indoraptor. And Blue did what she had to do, and she killed it. Then you have the Giganotosaurus. He didn't eat anyone important. He didn't go on a killing spree. He was just a big dinosaur being a big dinosaur. But still, the narrative fed the idea that he was like the bad guy, right? And so the T-Rex comes in and kills him. And the T-Rex just shows up in the end just to have that final fight to kill the Giganotosaurus. And it's just like, I'm not mad that they killed this fake creature that doesn't even exist and it's all just make-believe. I'm not mad about that. I'm mad because, narratively speaking, while the movie isn't great, it was pretty much solid all the way through. And then this shoehorn scene comes in, makes Giga this big villain, the new Indominus, effectively, and the T-Rex just kills him. And it's just like, there was no build up to the death of the Giganotosaurus. There was no payoff. You know, the Indominus Rex makes sense. The Indoraptor makes sense. Even if you would have brought the Spinosaurus back from Jurassic Park 3 to replace the Giganotosaurus in this, you could make the argument that the T-Rex killing that Spinosaurus would somehow be like, aha, this is a build up from that movie. But the Giganotosaurus just doing his own thing. Even earlier, he could have killed the T-Rex probably, but he didn't. He just wanted to get the deer. It was just such a weird shoehorned narrative plot point that, like I said, had no build up, and the payoff didn't really make sense. So here's the thing. Maybe it's just me, but it felt weird. So I don't mean to go on this long of a tangent about this scene, but it's just because this is the only scene on the entire movie where I just felt like, why? You know, even if there were some rough scenes or some great scenes or just some okay scenes, there was only one scene for me that felt like a, why is this in here? And it was that scene. And I think it was just put in because some producer said, we need to sell toys. We want people to remember the fights. People didn't like Fallen Kingdom, but they liked the original Jurassic World. And there was a big dinosaur fight at the end. Even though the narrative has set up that fight all the way since the beginning, we need to have a fight in there. And it just feels like it was unearned. So honestly, while I enjoyed this movie for pretty much the entire run, that last 10 minutes, that random fight scene that was just shoehorned in, it did kind of make the movie less good for me. Still, like I have stated a couple times in this video, it's not a great movie, but if you know what you're going to see, you're going to like it. So there you go, guys. That is my Jurassic World 3 Dominion review. If you guys have any questions for me regarding any of these characters or anything specifically I didn't mention, let me know in the comments below, because if I use your suggestion in my follow-up video, I will give you a shout out in that video. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.